We'll take a few questions now.
Yeah, just wondering, what do you see as the purpose of this conspiracy? Was it financial gain or was it intelligence gathering?
So what the indictment alleges is that these FSB officers used criminal hackers to gain information that clearly some of which has intelligence value, but in doing so and in using criminal hackers to do so, the criminal hackers used this opportunity also to line their own pockets and for private financial gain.
Ms. McCord, you said this morning at the Financial Times seminar that the government has a number of tools at its disposal, including prosecution. Will the U.S. seek other means other than these indictments to go after the Russians, sanctions, trade limitations?
I think those are things that have yet to be determined. We, as you noted, we are committed to using all tools, and we certainly, in this case, we were able to develop the evidence to the point where we were able to bring criminal charges consistent with the standard required for that, but that doesn't mean we won't look to see if there are other tools that might be available.
Well, will you look to see if there are other tools?
I think we will definitely engage in those discussions and considerations.
Is the expulsion of diplomats one of those?
For this type of matter, that's certainly nothing that we've been, that I'm prepared to address today.
Also, real quickly, you talked about this, two of the indicted are members of the Center 18, which was the FBI's point of contact in Moscow on cybercrime matters. And you described it in the press release as beyond the pale. Wouldn't it be just natural that people would use that to exploit this?
I think what is...
Does that speak of a certain degree of naivete on the part of the U.S. government?
So I don't think it does. The point there is these are the very people that we are supposed to work with cooperatively in law enforcement channels, and rather than do that type of work, they actually turned, sort of against that type of work. And I can certainly pass to Paul if he has any additional comments on that.
I would just add, we've had limited cooperation with that element of the Russian government in the past. In this case, with respect to Balan, we have asked, he's been charged previously also in one case out of the Northern District of California and also in Nevada back in 2012. We have asked for his return in 2014 through official channels to the Russian government, and we've had no response. And I think that is reflective of the relationship and the approach we needed to take in this case in terms of the lack of cooperation we've gotten.
Does the relationship need to change or end?
We need and have to have cooperation from all international partners in order to resolve cases like this, among many other threats that we face. But when we look at this case, and I'm speaking to this case now, we expect and hope for their cooperation here. And in fact, post this announcement, we're going to go out with another official request, not just for Mr. Balan again, but also for the other two individuals that are charged here and are residing in Russia now.
Somebody else asked a question. Next.
This model that you are alleging of FSB officers working with criminal hackers, is this sort of the new normal that we're seeing in Russia, or was this a deviation from your standard expectation of how these crimes are carried out? And how were you able to make the link that all four of them were in tandem together?
So to take your first question, I'm not going to be specific as to Russia on that. We are certainly seeing more and more use by nation states of criminal hackers to, to carry out some of their intentions. That I don't think is necessarily unique to Russia in this particular case, the FSB. And the indictment, I think, alleges in pretty great detail the conspiracy among these four men, the sharing of infrastructure and hacking techniques and tools and procedures, the sharing of the cookies that were minted to be able to gain access into accounts, and the really contracting with Baratov to do additional intrusions into account holders at other email providers such as Google.
Ms. McCord, do you think that there's a connection between this case and Russia and FSB's interference in the election and the hacking there? And can you speak to the president's claim that as part of that, he himself was subjected to surveillance at Trump Tower?
So our indictment doesn't allege any connection between this intrusion and the intrusions into the DNC. That's a separate investigation, and I have no comment on the president.
The FSB was involved in both. Is that just coincidental? You think these were separate operations for, on the one hand, to be hacking into Yahoo and Google, and other parts of the agency to be hacking into DNC and the election process?
We don't have anything that suggests in our indictment that there's any relationship between those.
And
That's an ongoing investigation.
Question, is there any evidence that you've uncovered? I understand the indictment does not address it, but did investigators uncover any evidence, or is this the same model that you saw with respect to the DNC hack?
I'm not sure I'm fully understanding your question about is this the same model that we saw? And if you're talking about use of criminal hackers, I don't know if that's what you're talking about. But that's an ongoing and separate investigation, and I really don't have any further information on that.
In your remarks, you did not specify whether these two FSB officers.
I'm sorry,
In your remarks, you did not specify whether these FSB officers were acting individually or on behalf of the FSB. That's the first question. The second question is, Mr. Belan, based on the FBI warrant here, it says he's a Latvian national. In the Department of Justice statement, it says he's a Russian. So is he Latvian or Russian?
So we will have to get back to you with any correction there
Because
on those.
you have two official documents with this contradiction. Can you answer the first question, though?
I no longer recall your first
The
question.
first question, I'm sorry. The first question is whether these two FSB officers were acting individually or on behalf of that agency.
So when they're as our indictment alleges, and as we have reason to believe based on our evidence, they were acting in their capacity as FSB officials.
I see the Attorney General's quoted in this press release. I just want to clarify, he is not recused from this investigation?
He is not recused from this
Do
investigation.
you anticipate that the Treasury Secretary will use the authority granted to him in President Obama's executive order about malicious cyber hacking to freeze the assets of either of the two FSB officers here? Is that a potential enforcement tool that y'all could use?
Well, I mean, there is, as you are aware from this morning's presentation, there is an executive order that allows for sanctioning in certain circumstances, including circumstances involving economic espionage. So again, to go back to sort of my response to Pete's question, I think the tools that are potentially on the table remain on the table.
And then for Paul, can you just talk a little bit more about how to maintain, or if it's possible to maintain, a trusting working relationship between the FBI and the FSB, given these indictments? How does that work?
I think that's a challenge. It's something we're going to continue to work at, and I think this case is going to be a great test of that, so we can gauge the level of cooperation we get from them. Now, having charged these individuals, we would like to see their full cooperation and assistance in bringing these individuals in justice to justice and further aiding us in expanding the scope of the investigation.
Absolutely. May I ask about Dokuchayev? He had a history before going to the FSB of operating in the dark web and using this alias of 4. Do you have any details about whether he continued using that alias and continued conducting criminal activity once he was formally part of the FSB? And which dark web form did he operate on, and what kind of criminal activity did he engage in?
So I'm not prepared to address those questions. I'm prepared to talk about what we've charged in this indictment.
Just to go back to clarify the earlier question, did you see a similar strategy or model that was used in the DNC hack as you saw in this case?
So that's an ongoing investigation, and so it's not one that I'm prepared to discuss what we've seen and what the status of that investigation is.
Has the DOJ or FBI heard anything from the Russian government as far as possibility of extradition?
We do not have an extradition treaty with Russia. We would hope that they would respect our criminal justice system and respect these charges and what they need to do.
All right, last question.
When can we expect a Canadian to come to the United States for this trial?
So that's an ongoing pending matter, which extradition will be requested, but I can't estimate what kind of timeline that would be on.
I just wanted to press